Why do I think Earth Day is important?
Yeah.
I want to know.
I mean, I guess it's important to acknowledge the Earth as being the source of where our food comes from, where everything comes from the Earth. It's what sustains us, so it makes sense that we should set aside a day to honor the Earth and take care.
Thank you everybody for coming to this Earth Day gathering. My name is Marley, and I feel incredibly blessed to be a part of this community and to be in this room with all of you who have done a lot of work cultivating community and really working with the land and going beyond what is, the cultural norm. And just looking here at this panel and at this room, we have a multi-generational gathering right now.
Interspecies.
And interspecies. So, and just from my heart to yours, thank you so much for everything that you have done that has helped bring us to this place right here, right now, celebrating Earth Day and being in connection with the Earth as I'm continually learning from you. And as I continually learn, I do my best to teach back through gatherings like this. And so for this gathering, we will be recording it, and there's going to be photography, there's going to be interviews, and so this is a really special time just to let everybody shine, whether you're on the panel or not, to be cross-pollinating our information and our life stories with each other. We're going to go ahead and begin today with Radiance is going to have a blessing to start it off.
Aloha, everyone.
Aloha.
So I'm a benevolent godmother in training, and I humbly offer this pule, this prayer, in gratitude for today's presentation at the Gaia Temple, honoring Earth Day. We're all here in service to the Aina as stewards of the land, bringing all our gifts and talents together in mutual respect and cooperation for the betterment of our land, the Aina, for us and future generations. We are here today to learn about food sovereignty and how to grow a food forest. And that gets Bruce Horowitz, that's your specialty. We are blessed with knowledgeable teachers to demonstrate how to have an abundant, edible garden in our backyard. As Marley said, our local permaculture experts, again, Bruce, and I think Michael's getting there, he's work at Gaia. Our Eco-Village community person, Amara from Gaia, and environmental activist, Bruce Miller. We're here to sit and listen. And Hajar, I don't exactly know what your title is.
The creator of this Dome Gaia.
I'm
the founder of Dome Gaia.
Okay.
Author of The Return of the Crop.
Okay, great. Would you consider yourself an environmental activist?
Not really.
Okay, all right. Welcome all of you here. We're here to listen to what they have to say about living in reciprocity with the Aina. So thank you, Marley, for that beautiful introduction, that consensus. We ask everyone to keep their hearts and minds open and spirits open in synergistic unity as we graciously move through the day, especially as we malama the Aina. I ask for all of us to take a silent moment now by closing our eyes and inwardly asking, what are we all grateful for living in Hawaii? So just to yourself, think a moment what you're most grateful for.
We also had Kealahi here. She'll also be presenting the local plants and talking about some of the Hawaiian traditions. And I was thinking, as we go through, I'll introduce you one at a time, and as I introduce you, maybe you could speak for about 5 minutes the passion that it is that brought you here. And I'd love to start with Bruce Miller. Bruce and I were debating a couple weeks ago about this upcoming Earth Day and how to really make it something special and poignant. And, you know, as a longtime activist, he's still holding that torch and tracking what's happening, you know, primarily on the mainland, but it impacts all of us with the politics. And I was incredibly moved by how Bruce has dedicated so much of his time, energy, and attention to creating progress, protecting lands and estates, and helping solidify a day of national awareness for the Earth. And even though here in Hawaii it's easy for us to recognize that every day is Earth Day, that's not common, right? Other people are extremely disassociated from nature, and we're incredibly blessed to have designed communities and lifestyles where we're living indoor, outdoor, this Dome Gaia being the perfect example of how we can be in communion and reciprocity with nature. So a little bit about Bruce. He has a PhD in marine ecology. He co-coordinated the first Earth Day. What year was that?
What was it, 1970?
1970.
Yeah.
Oh. He directed the UNH Sea Grant Extension Service and the UHC Grant Extension Service. And he started several coastal parks, including the Kahalu'u and several other Hawaii and in Micronesia. He wrote and helped pass the nation's first ozone protection legislation, and he's designed and directed the UH Office of Sustainability. So,
Thank you.
yeah, I did a little bit of research, and I'd like for you to take us back to 1970 and how this
Yeah,
got started.
thank you. It was interesting because in 1969 I was finishing my PhD, and I was sure I was going to be a research scientist. And that was a track I was on, and the Santa Barbara oil spill happened. Gaylord Nelson went out there as a senator and looked at it and said, "Hey, we have to do something." And he thought, well, why don't we do something similar to what they did around the Vietnam protests and some of these things? So they said, we're going to do teach-in. So a guy named Dennis Hayes, who was a graduate student at Harvard, got hired by Gaylord Nelson, and Dennis recruited me to do what we would call the first national environmental teach-in, which was supposedly we would have every teacher in every classroom across the country take that one day and teach their course with an environmental focus. And that's how it started in '69, and it began to spread, come out of the classroom. And by April 22nd, 1970, there were 20 million people, and it was unbelievable. It just went from like nothing to this big thing that I've always been hoping would happen again. I was hoping we would do it for this Earth Day. I wrote some things that I thought would attract people. People were too distracted, but anyway, back then it was a focus, and on Earth Day, it was just awesome to be. Everybody was doing things, cleanups and plantings, and you name it. And then ever since then, in my different career that I held, I directed the Sea Grant program in New Hampshire, then in Hawaii. And every year we used Earth Day as a place to recruit community people to plant trees in campus or create a sustainability courtyard at UH, or anything that had to do with the environment. We would find people wanted to do something because they wanted to get involved, and they waited until the end. And the very last couple of days, they said, "Oh wow, we can do something." And so there would be a big turnout, and I think it's been that way ever since. That this idea that April 22nd is when it happens. So yeah, I'm glad you're doing this. It's good to bring people together on Earth Day. It's a very collaborative, cooperative type time, and I've certainly every year been lucky enough to coordinate Earth Day at some place. And this one here, Brian Schatz, who's now a senator, used to coordinate Earth Day for me back when he was a student at Pomona. So we worked together, and he's a real believer in environment and the environmental things we care about. And anyway, I don't know. Throughout my career, I've been fortunate enough to be in a job where I could have some some power to make change, and so I could work to create parks, and I could work to, you know, get laws passed because I had the right connections. And if you have the right connections, you can make things happen. And so I was fortunate. And I thank you for all being here. And if you have any questions, you know, just feel free to ask me or whatever, you know.
Thanks. And just one more question.
Sure.
You said that you were in right relationship people to help create progress, and some of that progress were laws that were being passed. What were some of the laws that were being passed that you helped support?
Well, the first one was back at the time. Well, back at the time when the ozone hole was getting bigger, we were really concerned about that, and we were aware that what was causing the ozone hole was the release of CFCs, chlorofluorocarbon from air conditioners and things like that. So I approached Mazie Hirono, who was at that time was in the legislature, and said if I wrote a bill, would you introduce it? So I wrote a bill that would basically control the release of CFCs from air conditioners and cars and everything. And she introduced it, and it got passed. And there was a battle between Hawaii and New Hampshire, Hawaii and Vermont, to see who could pass the first bill. We got we got ours through the day before Vermont did, but we became the first state in the nation to restrict the release of CFCs. And you know, and that bill then, you know, be multiplied, and before it became a UN bill. And the thing that's kind of neat about the ozone protection aspect is that it's one of the few laws that actually made a change. The ozone hole has gotten smaller, and you know, everything else. There's more CO2, and there's more population, and there's less species diversity and everything. But this is something that got better because of something that was done. So it was kind of cool to see. Actually, you can make a difference. And the thing that I'm aware of now, and is that, you know, it's okay to, have people individually take your cans and they dump and recycle and everything, but it takes legislation to really make a change. And if we had legislation and we banned plastic, it would be effective. Just trying to recycle plastic doesn't make any difference. There's so much plastic out there, and it gets in everything. But if we had a law that would regulate it, which we would if we had a good government, in effect. So it takes a government presence to really make the big things happen. I mean, we can do little things, but we can't do the big things that actually stop something from creating a lot of problems. So.
Thank you.
That's why it's so important. I'm going to put my energy into getting this government out. That's what I did a post in Earthday, which was designed to, I thought, would get people all excited about, doing things like, boycotting, a bunch of stores and a whole number of things I had. I got about, 15 likes. And then I did a post about the Earth being at the vent this morning, and I got about 50 likes already. So it's hard to get people motivated for the big things. The little things they get all excited about on Facebook, but the big things they don't want to read them, or they're too difficult or whatever, so nothing happens.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll come back to get everyone's vision of like what's happening now.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. Wow. Would also love to introduce Bruce Horowitz. So when I first came to the island, I had many people kept pointing me to Bruce's direction. And you and I still yet to have like a single sit down, so it's kind of funny it's happening this way, but really appreciate you being here. Bruce is a permaculture teacher, a master gardener, an herbalist, and he's dedicated to creating a collaborative culture where humans live in synergy with all parts of this miracle called Earth. Professionally, Bruce works on community projects and teaches eco-village design worldwide at courses by Gaia Education. You can learn more about Bruce's work by visiting earthcraftsolutions.org. Yeah, and Bruce, can you tell us more about your work and how you work with what it is that you teach?
Yeah, thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here with everybody. I mean, I take my marching orders from the big mama. And really, like, it's about observing how nature works. Nature has 4.8 billion years of R&D behind this incredible, miraculous creation. And if we put ourselves with our creativity, with our opposable thumbs, with our shovels, with our work boots, and our big brains at service to what's already happening, we can actually make it better. And we can create biodiversity, we can build soil, we can do things like, heal the atmosphere. It's all actually very doable if we just apply ourselves in harmony with what's already happening. And actually, because we're so creative and we have so much power, we can choose our interventions in the ecosystems very strategically to really improve things rapidly. And to get our own needs met in a way that, provides ecosystem services. So instead of trashing somewhere to build a house or grow our food, we can actually grow our food and build houses in a way that builds soil and clean the air and clean water and all this stuff. And so that's my approach, is how can we work in harmony with the natural systems that are already working. And of course, it's more fun to do it with your friends. So I'm all about doing it in community, and it's much more sustainable and resilient to do it and live in community, which Amara will talk about in a minute. And so, yeah, for me, it's I come from a background really where originally I was a chef, and I was a raw food chef. And then I just discovered where's all this food come from? And so I had to learn to grow food. And I was oh, there's this cycle of food, you eat it, then the food scraps turn back into soil. So there's all these beautiful cycles happening. And like I said, if we tune into these cycles and we plug into them, we can kind of create these, what we call in permaculture, spirals of abundance. Where the more human energy we're putting in, we're actually creating the opposite of entropy. We're creating abundance and energy moving and crystallizing into things like trees and beautifully natural built buildings and communities and garden beds and food forests. So I've just fallen in love with being a part of the dance, really. It's I mean, to me, that's our job description, and it's the most fun ever to do it with your friends. So it's okay, the job description is to be gardeners and builders, and to work with what's already here, and to understand that everything we need is usually all around us. And if it's not, we can find it from a neighbor or whatever and plant it, and it's bringing it all in really close. I love sitting here where I look out and there's just this lush forest right here. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be strategically adding elements to the forest and saying, well, maybe we want some building materials or some food or some medicine. And so we're strategically placing the elements in the system that we need. But they're still part of this system that's creating air, habitat, biodiversity, soil. It's so it is really this, synergy with the miracle that's already happening, like you said. I just feel fortunate that I get to play as a part of that big game that's happening, and I love doing it. And I'm glad that we're all going to be here doing it together again.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really showing up. And I've gathered people with help of everyone here, but really, you all are bringing the wisdom. I'm curious for you, do you feel like food forests are that intelligent application that we should be focusing on as an intervention right now? Or what do you think is the best, like what would you say would be the best thing to focus on right now as far as interventions go?
Well, I mean, I think for like an individual or a homestead or even like a village level, obviously like planting a food forest around you, to me is a total no-brainer, right? And I actually, like, I almost prefer the term like resource forest, because it's not just food. It's also like building materials, it's medicine, it's a lot more than just food. We like the term food forest, has a nice ring to it, and it has this very practical and romantic idea that you like step out your door and you can pick a lemon, or there's like tea herbs or salad greens, and in permaculture the idea is that we put things in really smart places, so we're not wasting energy. So the idea with a food forest is just intelligent placement of the elements, and so absolutely it's something that everybody could do. Even if you live in an apartment, you can be growing some food and resources on your balcony or in your apartment. And if you live in Hawaii on a piece of land or in a community, you can stack and pack tons of resources into the landscape, and then from an energetic perspective, having as much of what you need right there in your landscape makes too much sense, right? And then also the idea is like letting nature do the work, because this is what nature does. Nature builds forests and creates soil and creates oxygen. And so if we're actually like participating with that to get our needs met, we are absolutely in alignment with a thriving, healthy planet. And we're also getting like the most healthy food, the most vibrant food right there, which is going to be the healthiest for us. I mean, if you go to Laikea, there's like food everywhere. There's like, and so it's, yeah, for me, it's like, to me, it's like everyone should be doing this, right? Yeah. And then, of course, there's other things like, you know, in environmental restoration and, you know, maybe more broad scale things that are, there's some really amazing like applications that we could take it out, like for bioremediation, like places that are super degraded that maybe we wouldn't want to plant a food forest, but there are technologies like putting successions of like mushrooms or hemp or different things to remediate like super toxic areas. And so we need to be thinking like in our local area, and then also sort of in our bioregion, like what are the areas that we would want to actually also strategically participate. And maybe it's not per se to like create food forests for ourselves, but we are using the same principles, because the cool thing about permaculture is these are like, it's like this really simple program of these basic principles derived from nature that are applicable to like all things, like organizing your desk and building a food forest and designing homes. Like all the principles apply. It's really quite amazing. But yeah, as far as like what we're doing today, absolutely hands down, everybody should be doing this. And it's also like when you have a food forest around you, it gives you something to participate in and be super happy about, because you're like working with soil, which gives you serotonin. You're like picking fruit. You're like harvesting your greens right there. It's like you're part of that dance on the daily basis, and that becomes like a huge part of your life. And then the idea also, if you really dial it in, that whole thing of like getting in a car and driving to a job that you don't like, that can really actually disappear, because once you create a system that has so much abundance in it, then you have a surplus to trade or sell, and you can actually like eliminate those external participations in kind of the toxic economy and be part of Gaia's economy. Super local.
Really well said. Thank you. Beautiful. Well, you kept calling Amari in a couple times here, so we're left to segue into the resource forest that you and your community have been stewarding and developing. Amara Karuna is a member of La'akea Permaculture Community for 17 years. Who here is from La'akea? There we go. Hey. And is a professional counselor, teacher of peer counseling, massage, and relationship skills, as well as an organizer for large events such as the Oregon Tantra Festival and New Culture Winter Camps. She is an author, singer, songwriter, graphic artist, and videographer.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, please tell us about La'akea and how you found yourself here.
Yeah, La'akea is a community that started about 20 years ago. And it was started by a group of people, I wasn't in the original group, who met each other at a new culture camp. And those camps are people that are interested in emotional intelligence and how to get along together, how to have good relationships. And so they said, well, this is fun to do this at a camp, but how could we do it all the time? And let's go to Hawaii and buy some land. So they managed to find a piece of land that had been a permaculture center, but had been actually abandoned for a couple years. So you can imagine what it looked like. It was like 8-foot tall cane grass everywhere, and they were cutting through it every day and going, oh, we found another building. And so they renewed that land, and there were mature forests there, and there were houses there. And since then, I joined them about 17 years ago, and we've been developing it. We're all off the grid. We're all have our own water catchment, and we have extensive gardens in several places on the land, and we have chickens. We have in the past had sheep, but we had to move them along when Pele was spraying the Pele's hair into the grass, and the sheep couldn't eat it. So we had to move them to Kona. We haven't gotten any more of them yet, but we keep talking about it. And we don't sell what we produce, we just eat it and help give it to people. And our central ideas are not only about permaculture, and we have taught permaculture design courses in the past. We have some of our members that are skillful at that. We have, I think, 11 members and trial members right now. So it's a small, tight-knit group. And we are very focused on social permaculture. So all of these principles that apply to the plants and the land, we wanted to figure out how to apply them to humans actually getting along together. And for me, I knew very early in my life that I wanted to live in community. And I think I have never actually lived alone in this lifetime, and I'm 68. I only had a nuclear family experience for 3 or 4 years. All the rest of that time I've lived in group situations, so I've been practicing a lot how to get along with people. And it occurred to me very early, looking at the epidemic of loneliness in our culture and how we've all gotten separated into smaller and smaller family units, and how stressful that is on everyone, what a struggle that is to be trying to go through life, making the money, raising the children, taking care of yourself alone or with one or two other people. Very, very stressful and not a normal human situation. And so it seemed to me that in order to get back to the feeling of tribe, and it was only been a couple hundred years that the extended families have broken apart, because many, many more people 100 years ago were living on the land and having farms, and they had multi-generational families and extended families, and it was much more like when you work on growing your own food, you have to work together. It's very, very difficult to do it all alone or with one other person. So
And I looked around early in my life and I was like, seems to me like the thing that makes everything fall apart, relationships, businesses, communities, is emotional problems. People not knowing how to handle their emotions. People not knowing how to release their emotions in a safe way and not dump them on other people. So I made it my goal to learn how to do that. And teach people peer counseling, teach people communication skills. So, and we study that specifically at Gaia. That's like a big part of what we do and why we've been there for 20 years, is that we understand what happens when someone gets triggered and how to help them in that situation. And so I'm very dedicated. It's my closest heart calling to help people understand their emotions and how to work with other people's emotions and have that be healthy. And,
Beautiful. Thank you.
yes.
And thank you for representing the community and for everything that you've done.
I want to say something else is that we're kind of unusual. People have looked all around the islands and they say that we're the only ones like ourselves that they have found, because we all own the land together in common, where it's an LLC. No one owns any more of the land than anyone else, so we all buy in equally. And we don't have a central leader. So we rotate the leadership. We all take turns leading the meetings. And we have a meeting once a week for our business. We have a meeting once a week called Heart Share, where we talk about our emotions and things that are going on. Every morning we have a check-in for the day, so people can talk about what they're doing and how they're feeling and what their dreams were like. And then every weekday evening we have a dinner that we take turns preparing. So it's very interconnected. We meet each other a lot, and we only have one central kitchen. Whereas we have like separate sleeping cabins, but we have one central kitchen, one central house. So that, and we designed it that way so that we would have to be relating to each other and stay in touch and stay close.
Can I ask a quick question about the LLC? Is it set up as a sole corporation, sole corporate, or is it any kind of ministry? Like you
No.
designed it as a business, basically?
It's just a business.
Okay.
Yeah, we have thought about getting a nonprofit going, but things happen at Gaia when someone is inspired and has the energy to do it. So no one has felt called to start the nonprofit so far.
Wonderful.
Listening to you, I'm being brought back to Sabine Lichtenfield of Tamara, and had an opportunity to live there for a month and study with them, and it feels like a really beautiful continuation of Hawaii, and that the knowledge is coming from this land and these communities, same but different.
Yes, and that they had the same source inspiration as we did, which is the ZEG community in Germany, which is an acronym in German that I don't know how to pronounce. But they were an amazing community that started when 50 people decided to experiment with staying in one place and no one leaving for a year. And they had a sponsor. They had a huge mansion and they had a wealthy sponsor, and they said, all right, you just stay there, live together, and do social experiments for a year. And so they're still there, and then they have a quite extensive community and retreat center, and they've spawned many communities, including us.
Wow, that was the Zeit?
ZEG, Z-E-G-G.
Zeit.
ZEG community. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, one thing about community is understanding independence, interdependence, codependence, and whenever you're sharing so many responsibilities and spaces, and you're growing together, and you're witnessing, and you're forgiving, and all of that, what is it in nature that's best helped you create a template that feels healthy and sustainable in the field of interdependence, codependence?
As far as I understand the natural world, everything you know, there's this whole Darwinian idea that everything's competing, and to some extent it is, but everything's also cooperating. And everything is finding its own place and giving its own elements. And the more diverse a system is, the stronger it is. So that feeling of inter-cooperation, like these trees would not be here except for all of the bacteria that was on the roots that was helping it metabolize the elements. You know, we would not be here if the plants were not making oxygen so that we could breathe it. And I also recently learned that trees emit not only oxygen and other things, they emit these chemicals that specifically make us happy. Happy chemicals. I can't remember the name of it, but and so when we're around nature and we're around trees, it supports our health. So I think that healthy relationships are easier when you're actually on the land and near nature. It's very, for me, it's very difficult to be in the middle of a city and all the electromagnetic fields and hardly any natural things and still feel happy and open. You know, it's much more difficult.
Well, yeah, and how lucky are we to be living on one of the most remote places on the earth, surrounded by ocean, and so it's easy for us to come into harmonics and more of like an internal state of being with the water than the frenetic energies of cities.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to bring in Keilahi, who is working with the local plants here, and learn from you a little bit about the ulu and the kalo. Keilahi's been living in Hawaii for 33 years, 19 years here on the Hawaiian Islands, Big Island. She is a cultural practitioner and advocate studying the hula, oleo, Hawaii, please excuse me for mispronouncing these words, and oil, lover of na ma'ea kanu o iwi, native Hawaiian plants, and has over 20 in her aina in Seaview, Kahena, including foods such as ulu and kalo. Yeah, and I know that you have a large passion for the kalo plant. Last year when I was down at Lolia, you came and started this big, beautiful planting day and put all those kalo plants in and really saw your heart and felt your heart with that. And would love to learn a little bit from you about the plants that are indigenous here.
Okay. So yeah, I'm Keilahi, and just a quick note on my background. I was raised in Omaha, Nebraska, never knowing that Omaha was the name of a Native American tribe. And I think that kind of epitomizes what I love about Hawaii. Is when I came here, I was in the Navy and I was stationed here. And I just love that the culture is so visible and connecting here and alive. And so I've never wanted to go back because it's so hidden there. And so I find it very inspiring, and I've tried to learn as much as I can. And the language, Olelo Hawaii, is, if you want to learn about being in Hawaii, I highly recommend you study the language, because so many of the words are embodied in the land and the culture and the aloha. So talking about the plant that is the most significant plant in Hawaii, the kalo, one of the coolest things I learned about it is the way it grows. There's the mother plant that you put either in the water or the soil, and it has these little maka, these little eyes that come off and grow. They're called oha, the little ohas that come off, and so eventually the mother will be surrounded by all these smaller plants, and you could call them keiki, the children, but they're actually called oha, and the word for plural is na, so the children would be na keiki. So ohana is the word for family, and it comes from kalo. It comes from that concept of the mother plant being surrounded by the children, and I just think that's so beautiful. But taking it even more deeper is the mo'olelo of kalo. The name of the plant is actually haloa, which is part of the genealogy of the Hawaiian people, actually. So there was Wakea, the Sky Father, and Papa Hanamoku is the Earth Mother. But Wakea also got together with Ho'ohokukalani, the star goddess. And they, first came the land, the Aina, the Hawaiian Islands, which were a result of both of those mothers. And then Wakea, there were all these stories of jealousy between Papa and Ho'ohokulani. And then anyway, Wakea and Ho'ohokukalani had a child. She was pregnant, and when she ended up having a miscarriage. And what came out of her was sort of an unfigured form, and they buried it in the backyard. And she went there, and this is one story. She would cry over this grave and feed her tears into that aina, and eventually the kalo plant grew from that being, and they named it. I don't think I have the name right down here. It's Haloa Nakalau Kapalili, because the leaves would wave and cross, and it was just a beautiful plant. So the reason it's so significant is because the Hawaiians believe that Haloa is their ancestor, and so it's part of how the relationship with the land and the plants. The parents they had another child, and they named that child Haloa after his older brother. And they taught him, you take care of your older brother and he will take care of you. And so that's kind of how the whole relationship with the land is. Take care of the land and the land will take care of you. And one of the olelo no'eau that I love in Hawaii is he ali'i ka'aina, he kaua ke kanaka, which means the land is the chief and the people are the servants or the slaves. So everything is about taking care of the land and fostering that relationship so that the land will provide for you. And that was also a very spiritual connection, because you can only control so much. The sun, the rain, the wind, anything that happens that's not man-made or controlled is considered an akua form. So there was a lot of spirituality in terms of asking for help. There was always a lot of chanting, prayers for things to grow. While they were planting, they would always have good thoughts, because they know that this plant is going to be feeding people, and they would only want good, pure thoughts. So when I learned about kalo, I learned the phrase nani ke kalo. You always are regarding the kalo as beautiful, and you go visit the kalo, nani ke kalo, and farmers are called mahi'ai, and they would actually sing to the kalo and spend time with the kalo, and it's just a really beautiful plant. It's a complex carbohydrate that was their staple back in the day. A medium-sized man would eat 10 pounds of poi a day, like that. They would have poi for every meal. It was called ai, okina ai, which now ai means food, but back then I meant poi. So you can kind of see how poi was food back then. And kalo was found in 62 different countries, maybe it was 65, but in Hawaii nowhere else was it more extensively cultivated than it was in Hawaii. So it was extremely, it can be grown in dry land or wetland. Kalo, lo'i would be the wetland like you would find in Waipio, but you can grow kalo anywhere, which is one of the most amazing things. It was grown extensively in Puna even, where there's a lot of lava. And the beautiful thing is, there's a style called pu'e pu'e, where you can even grow it on cement. You just have to have organic material that you make a mound, or you can have like a raised bed and fill it with organic material, and then you just stick the huli into that, and the kalo does not grow down like a carrot, it actually grows up. So as long as you plant it and then keep adding organic material, it will grow anywhere. So as far as wanting food sustainability, it's the best plant that we could grow, and it's the most significant plant in Hawaii, so to me it's kind of a no-brainer. I didn't want to bring one in my garden because I have a very small garden, and I didn't want to take a kalo when they're not ready. But I did bring a ha, which is the ha is the stem, and the lao, which is the leaf, so that you could at least see the lao, what was it? Launi, the waving leaf, and every part of the kalo plant is edible. You can cut up the stem and make a stew. I was told that you can make a stew that tastes exactly like chowder, and you can eat the leaf. Like you've probably heard of squid luau or lau lau. Those are things that are all made with the leaf. The thing to keep in mind is that every part of the kalo plant has these crystalline structures in it. So you do not want to eat anything raw. It needs to be cooked for at least an hour, because of those things need to break down. Otherwise, your mouth will itch. It's really horrible. If you bit into a raw corn, you would probably want to go to the hospital. It's that bad. Like it's wow. If you look at one of these crystals under a microscope, it looks like barbed wire. So yeah, you need to cook. Like lau lau, if you steam them, I think if you steam a whole huge pan of it, you have to steam it for 3 or 4 hours. It takes a really long time. So anyway, and I love the way that kalo is planted also. You harvest the kalo out of the ground, and you cut the top off, and then you can replant that. And that's called the huli, because you're turning it over back into the soil. And then you plant all of those babies as well. Anyway, those are just a few fun facts. Oh yeah, and if a baby is allergic to mother's milk, they could take the poi and water it down and feed that to the baby, and it was completely enough to help the baby grow strong.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Do you know any local schools or gardens where if we wanted to do more of the traditional land work, where we could go to do that?
I know Pahoa High School just planted a garden out in front of the school, and I did see a little raised bed with kalo, but it's really small. The biggest Maku'u Hawaiian Homelands Farmers Association, they just had a huge festival called the Ku'i Fest. Ku'i means to pound, because you pound the kalo after you cook it. You can pound it, and that's how you make poi. I should mention that. But anyway, they just had a huge Ku'i Fest, and they had farm tours. They have a huge mala garden in the back with lots of kalo. And I should mention too, Nick Kalamakani Francisco is the person I've learned the most about kalo from, and he runs that garden, and he would be a good person to reach out to if you wanted a tour of his mala, or possibly yeah. And he learned a lot from Uncle Jerry Konanui, who is from Puna.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I'll pass this one, but don't lick it.
Not biting, but it's a good umbrella.
Oh, and I should also mention there are so many varieties. So many varieties. I think they identified 84 back in 1990 or 1920. The UH system identified like 84 varieties, but they asked Hawaiians, and I think the Hawaiians had knew like 300 some varieties. And it's all based on the different colors of the ha, the stem, there's different colors of so many different things on the plant, and where the pico is the belly button, center of the leaf.
How about the shape of the leaf? Is it consistent?
There are definitely, some leaves are longer, some have the pico or the V, where the leaf comes right to the pico and is kind of split, and some it's not. There's just so many varieties. And some are sweeter than others, and there's a famous one in Pune, which was called Mana Ulu, which has a yellow corm actually, but it's very sweet, and it only takes 8 months to grow. So that was a really popular one.
Can you say again where the babies come up from as it's growing?
They're called oha.
And they come up from the stem?
From the corm, the mother corm, they kind of, like a potato that has those little eyes? So yeah, it's like a little eye off the side of the corm, and then they grow into plants. And they just kind of pop up out of the ground around the mother.
Have you been up to YPO, to the big cow patches?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found Kulia and the whole tea house family, and that patch is amazing. I got to be part of planting it 10 years ago, and I was just up there.
Yeah, that would be another idea.
That would be fun. Yeah, it'd be really sweet to take a community trip. I know some people down there as well.
Yeah.
If I could say, I'm Michael, I live at La Caille. We have extensive taro beds in the garden, about 400 square feet or so is in taro. And we always have way more lilies than we know what to do with. Because one plant can make like 5 to 10 keiki, and what do you do with them? It's too many. We can't use them all. So, because you have the top of the plant plus all 10 keiki, there's not enough room to plant all those out. So, if anyone needs any taro starts, we have them. So, contact us, we can give you.
Yeah, it's such a great plant to share and trade, and
We have lots of varieties too.
We have several varieties. Yeah.
There's at least one that has much less of the spiky stuff in it.
Yeah, there's one, I'm not sure the name, it has a white pico and a huge leaf. The leaf can be 3 feet across. It's a giant taro. And the corm is white, it's not pink or purple, it's just a white corm. It cooks fairly quickly, maybe half an hour to cook the corm. It's good for table taro, it's not a poi taro, but it makes a nice taro mash with coconut milk or whatever. Anyway, I don't know the name of that one, but it's very abundant. Huge, like 10-pound corms you can get from that one.
That'd be so fun to have the next gathering, do like the full variety and learn how to grow them and how to prepare them together. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Well, and we have Hajar Gabran. And we are in one of Hajar's buildings. He is the founder of Dome Gaia. And in search of a miracle, Hajar went out to discover and create low-cost, high-quality, eco-friendly housing that would be accessible worldwide, which is how this was created. After publishing his book, Return of the Prophet, he began working on Dome Gaia in 2015, testing varieties of materials for sustainability, durability, accessibility, and cost. When he discovered Aircrete, which is what this is made out of, it's a unique combination of limestone and dish soap, he knew that he was onto something miraculous. So in just 10 years, Dome Gaia has built hundreds of domes across the world. Community members have been so moved by this work that they've initiated independent movements of their own, building the domes. And today, whenever we consider what it's like to be close to the earth and to be, in reciprocity with the earth, biomimicry, architecture that considers, the ways that we developed as humans that are mammals, and nature, and rather than living in these square rooms built out of steel, living in more organic materials with round curves like we see here, how that impacts our psyche and our ability to relate to one another and nature. It's very interesting to me. So, Hajar, can you share what this process has been like for you and how that relates to, whether it's humanitarian work, providing accessible, affordable housing worldwide, or living indoor, outdoor, and what that shift has been like for you?
Sure. Thank you for that introduction too. That was really inspiring.
And I feel like there's been so much shared already. I just want to thank you all for your patience now to hear my story. And,
I wonder if we could allow some people to come and sit inside. There is some seating in here.
Yeah, there's lots of floor space.
There's two or three chairs.
And there's a cushion. And the dog sits, he's totally welcome to come inside. There's one other dog in here. Yeah, as long as they don't start running around.
Yeah.
Oh, it's quiet.
Hey.
Quiet.
Hi.
You want to come in?
Hello. Hi, lovely.
welcome. Just missed everyone's introduction.
They are video recording, so
Yes.
if you could keep the dog in, yeah, that would be good.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my story, well, I'm Hajar Gibran. Hajar in Arabic means sculptor of stone. And Gibran, a lot of you are probably familiar with Khalil Gibran, the mystic poet. I'm an ancestral descendant, so I'm part of the Gibran family. And so I feel that's who I am, that I'm this builder, and I'm really moved by the mystical dimension of life. I'm trained as an engineer, but in an early age, my brother, 1 year older brother, accidentally killed himself, and I went through a real dark night of the soul and was brought out of that through hypnotherapy, which led to me studying shamanism, and really got involved in my inner life, my inner world through those practices. And in that, I met Khalil Gibran as my spirit father, which to me wasn't anything mystical. It was just normal. You know, everyone who goes through a training and learns how to connect with their spirit guides will meet someone that will be their spirit guide. And so it made sense that Khalil would be my spirit guide. But I kept a daily meditation going, connecting with him, and also my spirit mother. And I started doing this writing. After the meditation, I would write a message from them to me called The Voice of Love. And anyway, it turned into The Return of the Prophet, which was, but before I tell you the end of the story, the beginning was, I had witnessed miracles working with one of my shaman teachers. I saw people brought back from the dead, and so at one point I asked myself, what would I do if I could perform a miracle? And I was channeling Khalil at the time, and I said, well, I would write The Return of the Prophet, which to me was kind of a joke. It wasn't really serious, because the Prophet is considered one of the great literary masterpieces of all time. And I wasn't a writer, I dedicated myself to writing. But anyway, so voila, I dedicated to that meditation practice and that channeling, and without ever sending a single email out or making a single phone call, I wrote the book. I was living on a beach in an island in Thailand, and this guy walks up to me and says, hey, I hear you wrote a book. And a year later, it was in 40 different countries in more than a dozen languages. And it was like, wow, that was miraculous. And so after I did that, I asked myself, I said, well, what would I do now if I could perform a miracle? And it just came to me right away, like it did the last time. I would solve the need for affordable housing, especially for my community, for my tribe, because I'd always loved living in community. And I understood that housing is sort of the basis of community. Until you've solved the need for housing, it's hard to really create community. So anyway, I created Gaia, and I feel like That's not really the truth. You know, it was pure magic. How Gaia also, kind of like you were talking about, how just like that, your mission sort of sparked a movement. Earthday now was all over the world. I made up the word aircrete to describe the material I was using, and I created, you know, I called my vision Dome Gaia, and just like that, people I met everywhere had heard of aircrete, had heard of Dome Gaia, and now, you know, all over the world, people are building aircrete domes. You know, the trainings that have really created a global community. So that's been really another sort of miraculous thing. And I work with sort of some simple formulas, like, you know, first of all, even before those two stories, I had created a company called Life Designs. I was a woodworker, and when the whole consciousness about the destruction of the rainforest and the destruction of our forests became popular, and I've always been a lover of nature and, you know, contemplative kind of personality, and spend a lot of time in nature, and I love trees. And so here I am, a woodworker, working with the dead body of the beings that I love. And I had this real deep soul conflict with being part of this machine that was destroying our forests. And so I really went into that struggle and realized that, well, death is part of life. The dying trees are essential for the living forest. So it wasn't really the dying of the forest. It was that we were breaking the cycle. You know, I thought, well, if I can create a business that the model is that we connect that cycle, so that I was working with, if I could work with salvaged material, and then profits go back to support rainforest protection, that I could keep doing what I'm doing. And so I had that vision, and anyway, that ended up being a real success. And it taught me that when I align myself with service to something bigger than myself, my life works like magic. You know, if all I'm thinking about is myself, and I go out and get a job and pay my bills, that, you know, that can be a pretty mundane existence. But if I you know, do some soul searching and find something purposeful, meaningful, that I can dedicate myself to, somehow there's forces that align with that. And also, you know, people want to support you if you're doing something that they care about too. So anyway, I just got a lot of support for Life Design, as it was called, and so that kind of really got me on track with, okay, my life is about serving, about doing something bigger than myself, and so that's carried through to Dome Gaia. And anyway, that's sort of, you know, there's more to tell, but that's.
Well, a little bit about Dome Gaia that I think is fascinating is, for example, you were saying that just pouring the cement for the house across the street, even before building the house, was $20,000.
Yeah, he
right?
spent $22,000 for the slab to put his house on.
Just for a slab.
And the
versus,
ground is already strong enough in my mind, you know.
Well, and this piece for the materials, not the labor, was 10.5.
Yeah, about 10,000
$10,500.
for all three of these things.
And this is it's like a two-story, you know, there's a bedroom, the bathroom. You guys are welcome to look at the space with me before we go over to the other piece that now Hajar's new vision that he's working on, a beautiful, once again, super economical, accessible home that can be used on our communities. So that way we don't have to, like you said, go into extensive debt or put, you know, our livelihood on the line just to create housing whenever we want to develop our own land. So we'll be walking over there after this for the planting, the potluck portion of the day.
Let me say a little more
Yes,
about that
please.
then, because I was never really satisfied with the Air Creek domes, especially in Hawaii. They were still too much work. There was too much waste involved. I don't know, it was too much work. And I wanted something simpler and really streamlined, because the idea is to make something that other people can really feel like they can do themselves. And as much as I love the Air Creek domes, they didn't quite satisfy me. And so now I have a new system, which you're going to see over there, where I'm just bending steel and creating a framework, gluing geotextile fabric to it, and just spraying it with cement. And it's so much simpler. And for Hawaii, much better, because we don't really need insulation in Hawaii. And so you'll see that when we walk over
These walls are
there.
fairly thick.
Well, these walls are only about 5 inches thick. But they, it stays pretty cool in here, because both the insulating property of the Air Creek, but also when you have a tall ceiling that ventilates out and a lot of openness, you just get a natural convection that keeps things cool.
Yeah, and so for me, I've been loving living here. I've been a fan of Dome Gaia and your work for 5 years. Really appreciative of, once again, the biomimicry of architecture and how we can really sustain our health and our mental health and work with our energy based off of where we're living. And so for me, living in this space has been a gift, specifically because I also sing a lot, and I gather people who sing, and the resonance in here is so beautiful. So when we think about vibrational medicine, just through singing, right where your head is sitting at 3 feet high, that's where it's the strongest. And it's really neat because we also have the circular acoustics. None of us need a microphone, and we can hear each other as if we're sitting right next to one another. So I appreciate this space for so many different reasons. And I feel like it would be a good time to get up and move our bodies. We've been here on panel for about an hour. We'll take a couple of questions.
Could we demonstrate maybe with a collective Om or something like that?
That's a great question, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we're gonna Om.
It's really good because the hair.
Great.
It's like
Okay, so let's take a deep breath in. Breathing in. Exhaling, letting the breath go. Let's do just one more breath as you breathe in, breathing in your energy, connecting to the surface of your skin, feeling your beating heart, feeling your belly. Exhaling, letting the breath go. And as you take this next inhalation, bring your attention into your heart, filling yourself with gratitude, breathing in. And as we exhale, we'll Om together. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this panel.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. And it is 2:41. We started with a little bit of 30 minutes, so we're actually still on track. Before we go to the next part, are there any last sentiments that you'd like to share as we land this part? Does anybody have any questions?
just gratitude. Thank you for your time today. Collective energy of talent, magic.
I have a question for Mara. I was interested in your saying, you believe that Gaia has stayed together because they're doing social permaculture, and I've been involved in skirting around the different communities looking for something like Gaia, and I noticed that the other communities don't seem to be able to instill the same practices. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, we actually do trainings for new people that come in so that we can all kind of be on the same page. And so that we all know how to do peer counseling, how to hold space for each other, and work through situations where we're triggered. We know how to do mediation when two people need help. And we practice nonviolent communication. But we also select for people that already have a fair amount of emotional intelligence skills. Because at this point we're very experienced, and we kind of need to find people who also have that experience. And a lot of times people wander in and they're like, oh, they have this romantic idea of community, like, oh, I want to live in community, it's wonderful. They've never even lived with roommates, and they have no clue about what it's like living with other people, and how you keep the kitchen clean, and how you do the chores together, and how you moderate, things that come up, and what happens if you're attracted to somebody that's somebody else's partner already. Oh boy, that can cause a lot of upset. And how do you navigate that with people? It's important. So yeah, we occasionally do trainings to catch people up.
Well, the question is how to get the skills that you have into other communities. That's what I'm interested.
They would need to find some way to study them. I can come and teach them. There's probably other teachers around here that teach nonviolent communication. Like I know Ano teaches it at Gaia Yoga Gardens. But they would need to call someone in without a training,
Personal experience with the community, and I'm doing all sorts of mediations and NVC different things, but they don't make any changes, so.
Yeah, it's important for everyone in the community to have that value. And we sort of coalesced around that value. So that makes it easy, but if it's just a bunch of people that have a different value, like maybe living together, doing permaculture, they may not have that same value of like interpersonal connection. And that is a problem that a lot of communities have. They don't all have that same value. They don't want to invest the time. Because it takes a personal commitment to confronting oneself and finding your own responsibility for your own emotions, and also learning how to share what you feel with someone else in a way that they can hear it. So it's time investment, and not everybody wants to do it.
Thank you.
Thanks for your work. Follow your workshops for more. Teach teachers.
Right. Do you have any bodies of work published, like books or?
Yes. I have a book called Heart to Heart, Hand in Hand, How to Trade Holistic Peer Counseling. And it's a big manual about how to do that. But it's not easy to learn just by reading it. So occasionally I do teach classes. I'm in the middle of one now.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I'm sure there's other people around too, but yeah. I really think that living in community is like the cutting edge of human evolution, coming back to our roots of living in tribes, but doing it as chosen family. Where we actually are deciding that we want to do that again and learn how to do it. So, yeah, I just think it's super important.
Yeah, that would be. Is that digital or is it in person, your course?
It's in person. And my book is on Amazon.
Okay.
Bruce, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, I would love to comment on that as well, having worked with you for many years at Hawaiian Sanctuary.
Right.
And also lived at Gaia for a couple times, and lived in many other eco-villages or quote-unquote communities. I think from my experience, one of the big differences, for example, between like Hawaiian Sanctuary and Gaia is the horizontal power structure at Gaia. where there is no person atop the pyramid who has tons more power than everybody else and gets to have the final say and be, exactly, and be like in that kind of patriarchal, like this is my place and I make the rules and I decide who stays and who goes and all that stuff, where it's a real community, in my opinion, is where everyone is on equal footing and sharing that responsibility, and you don't have the same kind of upsets that I've seen happen over and over again in this different kind of structure, where we still call it community because it's people living together, but it's not really like intentional community in the same way.
It's not egalitarian community.
Exactly.
Which is what we're doing.
And so for me, that's like the core kind of structural part of it. Like you can learn as much NVC as you want and all this stuff, and really if you don't have that kind of buy-in or you're not empowered in the same way with everyone else, then it always seems like there are these big explosions and upsets in these other so-called communities, which you and I know very well.
And I am the mediator there, and I hear all the stories of people come to me for help. But there's nothing I can do because there's a power imbalance there. Until that changes, there's nothing that can be done except for me to offer each person personal growth here.
It's just like what was said earlier, where the land is the chief and we are the servants. There's a Hawaiian prophecy that those that are above shall be brought down, those that are below shall be brought up, through the words of Io, the hawk, Io e ao, the heavens are in me, Io e kwe, the heavens are in you, Io e tato, the heavens are in us all. And if we can get behind that idea, we can work together.
It sounds like the big difference between these two places is they all have equal buy-in, whereas they don't. Somebody owns it, whereas they all own it, and you get a really different vibration, don't you think?
It's much easier for a couple of people to get together and buy a piece of land and then invite friends. And that's usually what happens. We designed it from the beginning, a group of friends going, no, we're all going to be equal, and we work by consensus.
And you're 11 now. How many did you begin as?
I think 6. Yeah, and consensus is also a very, you have to have a lot of patience to do consensus, you know. Majority rule is much faster, but when you're living tightly together and it's very important to come to some kind of mutual agreement that everyone can be okay with at least, because otherwise the people that are not happy with it will sabotage it subconsciously, if not consciously. So we try to really we're not going to do anything unless we've got a consensus.
Does anybody use Ho'oponopono? Do you use?
I beg your pardon?
You use Ho'oponopono?
Yes, I use it all the time.
Yeah.
It works in small clusters, but it doesn't work in the larger sense of change. Because the power is imbalanced there.
Can you say a little more, Mara, in like a nutshell? Like with consensus, it means everyone has to agree to something. Because I feel like having group, choice and how to do that in an efficient way. Because I sense it could take a lot of time and energy. But is there like a brief way you can share about how that works at Lafayette?
We have some of that on our website.
Okay.
Our website is www.permaculture-hawaii.com. And we have a bunch of documents on there, like our buy-in process, our buy-out process, our consensus process, how we work with children, a lot of information about how the community actually runs. But basically, it just takes a lot of time. When someone proposes something, you all talk about it, you take turns raising your hands, talking. You have to decide if you are going to, if it's something a lot of people want to do, but like 1 or 2 people are like, I just don't want to do that. You have to decide if you're going to block it. And if you block it, then you're going to get a bunch of people talking to you about why you're blocking it. And so it's a lot of social pressure. And so you end up just kind of working it out until you find some kind of a win-win for everybody. And then, or else you could just say, I pass, it doesn't matter to me. You know,
It's
so
another option too. You can say yes, you can say no, or you can say I stand aside.
I stand aside
Which
on
means
this
I
one.
can live with this. I'm not a hell yes, but I can live with it.
Right.
So that
And that includes all the people that come to be with us. Like we have work traders that come for up to a month. We screen them beforehand. And then if they're gonna stay longer, we all have to agree that they stay.
Are you aware of, there's a book called Reinventing Organizations, which is all about self-managing systems?
I'm not aware of that one.
Because
But there's
anyway, it talks about how to get beyond consensus, but still have a really empowered team, and you haven't been eliminating a lot of them.
Say it's here where our pieces fall in place. Any rain softly kisses us on the face. Anywhere means we're running. We can sleep and see them coming. Where we drift and call it dreaming. We can weep and call it singing. We pray when our hearts are strong enough. We can bow cause our music's warmer than blood. Where we see enough to follow. We can hear when we are hollow. Where we keep the light we're given. We can lose and call it living.